Welcome to Haunted History. I'm Tim Renaud.
And I'm Christina Lobo.
No matter where you go, Charleston is brimming with history at every turn.
But sometimes history sticks around.
In this chapter of Haunted History, we take you to 3 locations
where the past may still be present.
Welcome to Circular Graveyard. Circular Graveyard is here at Circular Congregational Church. It is the second oldest congregation in the city of Charleston, but it is the oldest known burial ground in Charleston. I always say known very specifically. I don't know where they put the first body in the earth, but this is the first dedicated burial space. So for several centuries, this has been home to the internments of some of the elite people of Charleston, the big names, lawyers and judges and doctors. And we do come in here on our Ghost and Graveyard tour, and we talk about all of the different apparitions and spirits. We talk about some of the interesting people and the weird ways they died, and we love bringing people in here. It's one of the most fascinating locations in Charleston. I do like to point out that this place has survived everything that the city has experienced. It sat here and bore witness to the American Revolution. It was here during the Civil War and countless fires and floods and earthquakes and hurricanes. And it's still sitting here and survived to tell us these stories. So huge privilege that we get to share it with people on our tours. We've got all kinds of different spirits in here. We have the spirits of grieving fathers. We have the spirits of children. We have spirits of Revolutionary War soldiers, Civil War soldiers, just the spirits of citizens, the elite upper echelon people of Charleston that built this community centuries ago. There's a specific part of the graveyard that I always sort of bring people's attention to on my ghost tours, where there's a lot of different tales of seeing this one lone, appearing to be male apparition that kind of wanders in this specific area late at night. And some people believe that it's Dr. Richard Savage. Some people believe that it's an executed Civil War soldier. I don't really have a specific idea about that. It's the one and only apparition, full body apparition that I believe I've seen in Circular Graveyard. But that's the one that comes to mind because everybody describes it as behaving the same way and looking the same way in the same area. And that's the kind of consistency that you look for when you're looking for a really good ghost story. There was a night a long time ago when I was standing outside the fence out here late at night after tours, and I looked into the graveyard where I had just been, and so I knew there was nobody in there. It had just been me and my tour group the whole time. And I look in and I see this figure of a man, just an apparition, like a shadow essentially, and it was walking down the path, and I watched him, and my first thought was, I'm looking at somebody who snuck in and he's up to no good. And I kept my eye on him for that reason and watched him walk and then just fade away. He just disappeared entirely. So that one did give me goosebumps and make me kind of jog a little bit back to my car that night. I think that most spirit is peaceful. I don't necessarily describe myself as being afraid of ghosts for that reason. I don't think that there's any harm from just the residual spirit of the people who lived and loved and laughed in Charleston. I think it's just energetic imprints that we're still encountering. I think that some of these tombstones would describe a lot of really interesting characters on ghost tours. I think they would describe, you know, the occasional loud drunk person on a ghost tour who trips over tombstones in a perhaps disrespectful manner. I think they would describe sometimes seeing children walk by crying because they're scared to be in the graveyard late at night. I think they might describe some of the tour guides who are enthusiastic and come back night over night and still seem fascinated. I think they'd have an uncountable number of stories to tell over the last 300 years for sure. As soon as the sun sets, most of Charleston's energy changes, especially in a place like Circular Graveyard, because not only do you have like the beautiful brick church that's centuries old, but you have these incredibly historic crumbling tombstones, and they have the beautiful funerary art that harkens back to the colonial era. You've got the giant live oak tree in the back with dripping with Spanish moss. So it is like a perfect Southern Gothic tableau in the graveyard at night. And I think that's why so many people respond to it on the graveyard tour, is it just really encompasses everything that we kind of imagine in Charleston to be spooky and Southern at the same time. This is my personal favorite graveyard and my favorite downtown ghost tour to give, because I just think there's so much to learn about Charleston. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, this is a tour that you can come on and learn more about the city itself, and at a beautiful, time in the evening. It's a great thing to do either way. I am Sarah Dean.
How long have you been a tour guide for Bulldog Tours?
I have been a tour guide for Bulldog for coming up on about 5 years now.
How did you get involved?
I was looking for a job that I could do in the evenings around the schedule of my kids, and I've always been into history and I've always been into ghosts. So knowing that I could walk around the city at night and talk to people about history and hauntings, I was like, well, that's obviously what I need to be doing.
How many ghost tours have you done?
I have done upwards of 1,500 ghost tours.
What drew you to Charleston's ghost stories?
I think that I love Charleston's ghost stories specifically because our community, our city is so old. You have 300 years of not just love and laughter, but loss and tragedy and wars and natural disasters. And all of that kind of dark and light energy kind of combines into so many different tales, so many different people, and so many different ghost stories.
Were you always interested in the paranormal, or did that come later?
I've been into the spooky stuff since I was a little kid. I have always been into ghost stories since I was a very, very little girl, and that has stuck with me throughout the entirety of my life. I find that whole other side of the veil to be incredibly fascinating.
Do you consider yourself a storyteller, historian, or ghost hunter?
I would consider myself to be all three. I'm a storyteller, I'm a ghost hunter, and in a small but unofficial way, I'm also a historian.
If ghosts could talk, what do you think they would say about your tours?
I think that if the ghosts in here were talking about me and my tours, they would say that I come in respectfully with the intention of telling their stories through a lens of humanity and heart and history. I think that they would say that I'm a good steward for the history of this place itself.
If you could spend the night in any haunted place in the Lowcountry alone, would you, and where would it be?
I would have to say that I would, and I would love to spend the night in one of the haunted houses in Charleston, one of the haunted homes, maybe one of the big historic house museums. And we don't necessarily know as much about the hauntings in the house museums here in the city, but I would like to be the person who finds out. So I would definitely spend the night. What is one word that I would use to describe this park? Active. In the paranormal sense, it is an active location. Welcome into Washington Square Park. I do think it's one of the most beautiful parks in Charleston. It was originally established as kind of like a public meeting space, a marketplace in the early 19th century. Now it is one of the beautiful parks that we display to tourists on our history tours as well as our ghost tours. It's filled with historic monuments and markers. It's filled with the beautiful, live oak trees that South Carolina is known for. So I love bringing people in here, especially on the ghost tours, because there's a lot of spirit to talk about in this area. So sometimes we'll talk about the legend of the Boo Hag in here. The Boo Hag is a skinless monster that stalks people from the tree line at night. So sometimes I'll bring people in here to tell them about that one and only monster that we have here in Charleston. Sometimes when I bring people in here, I'll talk about Annabelle Ravenel. Annabelle Ravenel is a young woman that was believed to be in a romantic relationship with Edgar Allan Poe himself, and might be the inspiration and the muse behind his most famous poem, Annabel Lee. So we believe that her spirit haunts this area as well. There's a house right over here to my right that's called the Ravenel House, and it's believed that Annabelle lived there with her father in the 1820s, and that's when she, at a very young age of about 15, met and fell in love with a man that we would later know as Edgar Allan Poe. She didn't know him by that name. She knew him as Edgar Perry. But unfortunately, they were not destined to be together. It was kind of a Romeo and Juliet situation, unfortunately. But they were torn apart. Their love was torn apart when she unfortunately passed away at a young age. And people say that she still appears on the balcony of the Ravenel house, just kind of pacing back and forth in this glowing white dress, waiting for her love to come find her and meet her one more time. And a lot of times I bring people into Washington Square and I talk about Charleston's most famous ghost, the lady herself, Lavinia Fisher, sometimes called the country's first female serial killer. So she was executed in the area directly behind me right now. And people believe that her spirit stalks young, handsome men through this park at night. Sometimes, you know, kids coming off the bars, right? Like College of Charleston students, Navy guys who are taking a little shortcut through the park at night and will all of a sudden notice this little wraith-like woman right behind them. So some people believe that her spirit's trying to find a romantic encounter here in Washington Square Park at night. So I did actually have a guy recently, and I was telling that story about Lavinia, and I was talking about how she follows, you know, guys to the park at night. And he was a young man and, you know, kind of college age and a fairly handsome guy. And he told me he waited till after the tour because I think he was a little embarrassed to say it in front of other people. And he said, I think I actually had that experience. And he talked about coming, you know, like down the street here on the side, like late at night and coming through. And all of a sudden just seeing over, you know, over his shoulder, this woman with like long messy hair, and she was talking to herself, and she was just kind of behind him the whole way through the park as he walked. And he said it like really unnerved him. She wasn't talking to him, she was just kind of shuffling behind him and making strange sounds and talking to herself, and he could never explain it. He could never see her again after he left the park. So it matched exactly the ghost story that people have talked about here for a long time. Some people have seen something pretty gruesome in here actually, which is the apparitions of nooses hanging from the trees in this area. We know that executions occurred in this area historically in Charleston. So people have seen those. People have seen the red eyes in the live oak tree branches. The boohags, the haints that haunt this area often will perch up in tree branches. And if you look up in the dark in the middle of the night, you might catch those big red glowing eyes. And that's how you know that they're about to follow you. There's so much history. Whenever you find a place in Charleston where all kinds of different time periods and events and important historical things have happened and they all kind of converge on one spot, that's where you usually find the most spirit activity in Charleston. So a lot of bloodshed, a lot of big decisions, a lot of people. You have the Four Corners of Law right behind me. You have public executions. You have markets. You have all of this sort of humanity jammed in over 200, 300 years. And so because of that, you get this residual energy and the spirit that stays here and continues to appear to people, especially after dark. It's a beautiful place to come day or night. If you're not into the spooky stuff, I always tell people it's just one of the prettiest parks in town. And when you're here during the middle of the day, you don't necessarily feel that kind of like heavy spooky energy as the fog comes in at night. So if you don't want to have the spooky experience, you got to come here during the day and check out the history stuff. The Mills House was built in 1853 by a man named Otis Mills. It has a pretty significant historic legacy in our community here. It was the headquarters of the Confederacy for about 2 years during the Civil War. A lot of important people have stayed here over the years. It is a replica of the original building, so I do like to note that for people, but it has some of the original ironwork and cornice work from the original building that they saved. But it's also considered to be one of Charleston's most haunted hotels, if not one of our most haunted buildings altogether. So it's one of the places that we come and talk about on our history tours, but also on our ghost tours as well for that reason. There's a lot of theories on who haunts the Mills House Hotel. There is a theory that it's haunted by some of the spirits of Confederate Civil War soldiers who were here during the Great Fire of 1861 and lost their lives near, in, or about the area during that incredible firefight. Some people believe that it's haunted by a man that we call the gentleman caller in Charleston. He's a very upsetting shadow figure that has appeared to certain women, certain individuals inside the hotel, but there's no real way to know exactly who he is. A lot of the spirit in the Mills House Hotel is pretty ambiguous. We don't know exactly who it is, but we do think it stems from that Civil War time period when there was so much chaos, so much going on in the building itself. The shadow figure that I'm talking about, the gentleman caller, has been described by women for many, many decades to appear to them in the middle of the night, kind of standing in the corner of the room, looming over them. And they all describe him as somebody that's kind of emitting a lot of hostility. Like you see this big shadow figure of a person kind of looming over you, and they say that he's emitting that hostility. Like you look at him and he looks at you, and you know that he doesn't like you for some reason. So all of these accounts of the people who've encountered him sort of describe him as being unsettling in nature. There are some people who talk about a lady in a purple dress who sometimes appears on the upper floors of the hotel. There's no real way to know exactly who she is, but some people have theorized that that is the spirit of a woman who used to work here in the late 19th century and unfortunately lost her life while she was working here, but kind of comes back because this was sort of her spiritual home during the time. So she's kind of wandering the hallways. Some people report opening the door up and seeing this woman that looks like she's from a different time period kind of drift past your doorway in the middle of the night. So she's often seen in the windows of the hotel as well. People walking by and look up and see this particular woman staring down at them from upstairs. When I was a little girl, my uncle worked at the Mills House Hotel. He used to tell me that there was something that would come behind him and slam doors as he walked through them. He would see kind of things behind him in the mirror when he was cleaning. He had all kinds of stories. He used to talk about a certain room that he would walk through and hear whispering in his ear. And a lot of guests over the years and employees that we've talked to have reported similar things like that. Having that personal connection to the Mills House and having talked to so many people who stayed here on my ghost tours, on my history tours, and they've told me about these, sounds going down the hallways at night. They've talked about the eerie feeling when you walk into certain areas. So having heard so many people talk about their ghostly experiences here has definitely made me a believer in, the haunting here at the Mills House. I did have a coworker who used to work with us years back who talked about having staying here with family at a certain point and sort of opening their eyes in the middle of the night to seeing one of the rocking chairs rocking back and forth in their room without anybody being near it, just kind of like opens his eyes in the middle of the night and just sees this thing creaking back and forth. And I don't know about you, but that would make all the hair on my neck stand up. So I do remember him describing that and thinking that was pretty creepy. I've always been a little bit scared of the Mills House Hotel, so I've avoided having any personal experiences here myself. Despite all of the creepy experiences, or maybe because of all the creepy experiences, I would recommend staying at the Mills House Hotel. If you have like a certain interest in the paranormal, the spooky stuff, if you want to do some kind of really luxurious and nice ghost hunting, I think the Mills House would be a really good spot to do that in Charleston.
If you are interested in taking the tour, scan the QR code on your screen now. It'll take you to Bulldog Tour's website for more.
As we close this chapter of Haunted History, I'm Christina Lobo.
I'm Tim Renaud. We'll see you on the other side.